Hey guys, you've heard of the Young Turks podcast because you're listening to it right now. But make sure that you subscribe and give it a 5-star rating if you like it. Thank you for listening. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John, I roll with you guys. Exciting day as always, of course. So Jeffrey Epstein's dead. We're going to talk about it in a second.
Spoiler.
I know, sorry about that. If you haven't seen that movie yet, but I think a lot of us have seen that movie. So we will talk about the predictions that came ahead of time about how that was going to go down. So anyway, that's coming up in a second. And the Trump administration once again proving that they are anti all immigrants, not just undocumented immigrants. Of course, someone threatens to kill AOC. Unfortunately, that's a fairly common occurrence these days. And the list goes on and on of the crazy things that are going on today. Tomorrow, by the way, Bill de Blasio on the program. So mayor of New York, running for president, latest presidential candidate to sign the Progressive Pledge. So that'll be it. He did indeed, here in LA. He's the only one to actually physically sign a piece of paper, which I liked. 8 o'clock Eastern on tomorrow's show, Bill de Blasio for a full half hour. And then later that night, Ron Perlman is going to join us on Old School. So
what?
I like them apples. So me, Ben, and Hellboy,
and me.
Right? No.
Me too.
We don't really have you scheduled, John. No, sorry to tell you that. That's at 9:30 Eastern tomorrow. So hell of a show for you today and tomorrow. So with that said, let's get going.
Okay, let's do it. In the words of Cenk Uygur, Jeffrey Epstein's dead. Okay, that's a simple way to put it, but it's huge news, although not necessarily nobody saw it coming. I mean, it's the sort of thing where a lot of people did suspect that something like this might happen. But I guess jokes aside, he's a terrible person, but he is dead. He was found unresponsive in his cell Saturday while he was awaiting trial on new federal allegations that he sexually abused dozens of young girls in the early 2000s. After being found, he was taken to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. All this occurred relatively early on in the day. And that left us with a weekend where we gradually learned a little bit more about what had led to one of the most high-profile prisoners in the entirety of the United States being free to supposedly commit suicide with nobody watching, nobody checking in, despite the fact that not long ago he was on suicide watch. They just left him alone, and they say he committed suicide. That's the idea.
Yes, so that is not definitive yet. That's very important. So the authorities are still looking into the matter, which is a good note of caution because even if it was a suicide and even if they were sure, they should double check, triple check, and quadruple check because for all of history, their work will be re-examined.
Exactly.
And so, look, if you were trying to launch 1,000 conspiracies, this is exactly how you would have done it, right? If you were trying to kill someone, this is exactly how you would have done it. But by the way, if you were committing suicide, it's also how you would have done it. So no one knows. And so I have 1,000 things to say about this, but let me start with the most important 2 things. No one knows what happened. So the people who are claiming that it's a suicide, you weren't, well, both sides. Let's start with suicide. Okay, I'm supposed to believe that everything that the government says is always true, and if I don't believe that under extraordinary circumstances, and I wait for it to be proven, somehow that's like crazy talk. No, the rational thing is whatever government officials say is immediately true, and everyone else is a conspiracy theorist. No, I don't accept that at all. Now, the other side, the people who say it definitely wasn't a suicide and he was killed. How do you know? Were you there? I wasn't there. You weren't there. How do you know? If you say it's suspicious, apparently the whole world is with you, right? My wife read it in Chinese news, and she's like, yeah, she's like, oh, did you hear they already deleted all the video? I'm like, no, that's not true. No.
Yeah, okay. I've seen a lot of comments to that effect, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of weird stuff. That's not what's wrong and weird about it, but there's a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, so there's a big, giant, fat, we don't know yet. Okay, so be wary of anyone telling you that they know on either side.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure though.
Is that right? Okay.
Pretty 99% sure, I think.
Okay, all right. So let's look more at the facts because as you'll see, some of them are Highly questionable, and if this was an act of incompetence, which is totally possible, it is historic incompetence.
Yeah, so let's run through what we do know. We know that his body was found in the shape of a Q. I'm kidding, okay, that didn't happen, but I'm sure Don Jr. will tweet it later. So look, he wasn't checked on for several hours before he was found dead on Saturday. Authorities believe he died by suicide because he was found hanging in his cell, which, yeah, I could see that. I mean, that's the first thing you'd think of.
Now, but it wouldn't be the only thing.
It wouldn't be the only thing, yes. Right. But the New York City Medical Examiner released a statement Sunday evening saying she could not make a full determination on Epstein's cause of death until she had more information, which is fine and responsible. He was supposed to be checked on every 30 minutes and should have been given a cellmate. The person assigned to share a cell with him was transferred on Friday, so the day before, and wasn't replaced. He was reportedly on suicide watch after an initial apparent attempt on his life about 3 weeks ago, but only stayed on it for 6 days. Now, a little bit more details about the suicide watch. This came out just a couple of hours ago. Defense attorneys pushed for him to be taken off suicide watch ahead of his death on Saturday. An unidentified source told ABC News. Sources told ABC News that Epstein had to undergo multiple psychiatric evaluations before officials decided to take him off suicide watch. There's likely no video showing his apparent suicide death. As sources told ABC News, it does not appear that cameras are trained on individual cells in the special housing unit where he was held.
Okay, so let's dive into a couple of those things.
Perfect storm.
Yeah, it really is. And there's more about the perfect storm of coincidences. And it really might be that for the 88th time. So first off, he had a cellmate for a while because when somebody is on suicide watch, you want someone else in the cell because if they go to hang themselves, presumably that cellmate will alert the authorities, right? He had a crooked cop with him who was put away for a murder. First of all, another giant surprise there. A crooked cop was in jail? Wow.
We got one.
Okay, so fascinating. Anyway, apparently Epstein claimed, true or untrue, that he was afraid of that his cellmate. They moved him out. They should have moved someone in. That is definitely regulation that he must have another prisoner with him in his cell, especially if he's tried to commit suicide before. And they ignored that regulation, and that was just not the case, okay, in this situation. Then the video. Look, I don't think it's reasonable to expect that there would be video inside the jail cell. I think that's too much of an invasion of privacy under any circumstance. But is there video around the jail cell? Of course there is. Now, as I said on Twitter over the weekend, if any of that shows up missing, that's it, fire everybody. Fire the Southern District of the district attorney for the Southern District of New York, fire Bill Barr, fire any Republican, any Democrat in any way attached to this, from the lowest person to the highest person, because then there will be nothing that could convince me that there's a series of coincidences that also involve missing tapes from that prison block, right? But that does not appear to be the case right now. In fact, right now we don't know anything about video.
So you're saying definitively he didn't do it?
Okay, stop it, all right? So,
100%? You're saying?
No.
Whoa, you're more sure than usual.
No.
Usually you're wishy-washy, you know?
So let's see what the video situation is. If any of it is missing, that's beyond a coincidence. Then I won't accept anything the government says, anyone in charge of this current investigation, right? But presuming that the videotape is there, it'll be interesting to see. And it'll be super important and relevant to see, did anyone come by his jail cell? If there is video of the hallway and no one came into his cell, then it is far, far more likely to be a suicide. If someone came in, probably not a suicide. Okay, so that's why videotape is so important if they have it of the hallway.
Just to add one more layer to this though, there's the debate between did he commit suicide or did something else happen? And you can fill in that blank in a lot of different ways. But that's not the only distinction. It's not just, was everything okay and he committed suicide, or was there a big conspiracy and he was killed? There could also be, was he left in a position where he could commit suicide by somebody who wanted him to commit suicide?
Yes, and so the fact that they took his cellmate away, they took him off of suicide watch on Friday. Man, if you were trying to set up a conspiracy, this is how you would do it. And then they had guys who were supposed to check in on him, officers every half hour. They wound up checking on him every 2 to 3 hours. They put a couple of really overworked guards on that shift. So one that had been doing overtime for 5 straight days, another one that was on mandatory overtime. To John's point, the third scenario was if you knew the guy was prone to committing suicide, and you wanted to set up an ideal situation for him to commit suicide just in case, this would be it. But if that's your version of the conspiracy, man, that's a conspiracy where you really got to cross your fingers and hope to get lucky. So
that's true. But if that was your flavor, it would be buttressed by the fact that 3 weeks ago he apparently tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
So it's not insane to think that he might, again, and especially when you add the extra layer, which is the cache of documents that came out like 24 hours before this happened. And some of it we already knew, some of it was additional information, but just to give an idea of a little bit that came out. So there was one individual, Virginia Roberts, Jeffrey, I believe her name is. So she's one of the people that was trafficked by this ring, and she names like the people that got her involved and things like that, but also names a lot of the people that she says she was forced to have sex with or directed to have sex with, including a late scientist, a modeling scout, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former Senator George Mitchell, a hotel magnate, a prominent hedge fund manager, this guy Alan Dershowitz, nobody has ever heard of, and Prince Andrew as well. And this information, like there was a huge amount of additional information that had just come out.
Pritzker is a giant Democratic family in Chicago, big donors to the Democratic Party in general, and now obviously in charge in Illinois. And so huge names on there, both Republican and Democrat. You know, look, I hope this is not unfair, and it might not be connected to this at all. But in Washington, I always used to hear two rumors, one about a Republican and one about a Democrat. And I always thought they were, I don't know. I'm after all this, I'm still kind of naive, right? Like, come on, that can't be true. One of the rumors was that there was a Republican senator who go into the men's bathroom at Union Station and have sex with guys that he found there. I was like, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. There's no Republican senator having sex in public in a men's bathroom in Union Station, the biggest train station in Washington, D.C. Turns out that was totally true, Larry Craig. Okay, totally true. Even though I found it to be the most unbelievable thing I'd ever heard. The other rumor I heard, and it doesn't mean that this is true, was people would always say, oh, Bill Richardson, a really interesting governor of New Mexico, did a lot of the things in government. A lot of people thought him for vice president, but the girl issue.
I've never heard anything about that.
Okay, yeah, and so that could mean 1,000 different things, okay? And by the way, it might have been woman issue, not girl issue. It's a vague recollection from a long time ago, right? Does that mean he's having affairs, which would make him the same as 90% of politicians, right? But all of a sudden his name pops up here. But look, it's just, the reason I bring it up is tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of super powerful names we already know about, and some we might not know about. Remember, they got a bunch of CDs from his safe. Why was he keeping them in the safe? That were labeled, Epstein's had labeled them as something about young girls, right? Was it just young girls or guys with young girls? And so now that brings me to a CNN report article written right before Epstein died. So obviously they had no idea that he was gonna die. This is graphic 7 and 8. So it's a legal analyst doing commentary for CNN, writing, we do not yet know who else might be implicated, but we have an important clue. The Southern District is staffing the case primarily with prosecutors from its public corruption unit. US Attorney Jeffery Berman urged the public, and quote, not to read into, of course. US Attorney Jeffrey Berman urged the public, quote, not to read into the unit assignment anything one way or another. But that is nonsense. You absolutely should read into this staffing assignment, the analyst says here. As a Southern District alum, I know that it is both unusual and significant that the public corruption unit is running this case. Normally, a sex trafficking case would be prosecuted only by the human trafficking coordinators who are part of the violent and organized crime unit that I once supervised. Public corruption is involved here for a reason. There must be at least one public official, past or present, involved in the case in some way. Now, when you have a unit that is looking at public corruption, and then he's in a government jail, and all of a sudden a series of remarkable coincidences happen that leaves him either prone to committing suicide, which we know he was prone to begin with, or whatever else happens, you've got to be asking questions. If you're not asking questions, you're not a reporter, you're not a curious person, etc. If you're the type of person who says, well, if one government official said it, it must be true. Yeah. Okay, well, reporting is definitely the wrong profession for you. And And again, though, do not jump to conclusions because we have no earthly idea what happened in that cell. And remember, he just tried to commit suicide 3 weeks ago, so it's not a crazy scenario that he committed suicide.
Yeah, and look, there have been a number of people on the news that have been sort of like, oh, maybe a little investigation, find out something. And some politicians similarly have sort of like, it seems a little bit weird. Like that same day, AOC was like, we demand answers. Like super clear, there's gonna be an investigation, we need to know what happened. This is, even if everything that they say is true, this is justice has been ripped away from so many people who've been fighting so hard for it for a long time. It's not the end of all the legal actions or anything like that. There's gonna be civil actions and a variety of different things, but he cannot be questioned. He can't speak at trial, all of that.
Yeah, so, and last thing, whether it's some sort of plot or, like I said, epic, record-breaking incompetence, the fact that they should have seen this coming is already overwhelmingly obvious, but in case it wasn't so, I'm gonna go to a couple of tweets here from one of our hosts, Hassan Piker. So graphics 9 and 10 here. This is what he tweeted not after the death, but several weeks before. This was on July 25th. He wrote, so we're all in agreement that we think someone's gonna kill Epstein before he gives up names, right? And lo and behold, Epstein's dead. Now, before I go to the second one, now, if a talk show host can figure out that this is a significant possibility, you would hope that the people holding him might think it's a significant possibility. And instead of taking every action to make it more likely, you would hope that they would take every action to make it less likely. If we could figure out that this could be a potential problem, again, if they couldn't figure it out and they did everything in reverse to make it more likely rather than less likely, I use the phrase literally, historic incompetence, because it will ring throughout history. This is not a small case.
Yeah, and it was so obvious. First of all, that he could not be given bail because he would obviously flee. And then the second he was put into jail, like this was the most obvious thing coming ever. Like after his initial, when he was attacked, we got the video we can go to if you want to, but Emma joined me on the damage report, and we talked to him in a way that it was like a joke that they weren't taking it seriously. Like obviously this is the highest profile prisoner. He's the most people from all across the spectrum that have an incentive in him not standing trial. Like the idea that they would not do everything that's necessary to be watching him at all times is absurd. It was laughable 3 weeks ago.
In fact, that leads me to Hassan's last tweet. This is also a couple of weeks before the death. It was also on July 25th. If you don't know, Hassan's the host of Breakdown and a new show on the TYT network, Agitprop. Check it out on tyt.com/agitprop. But that's a whole different matter. But in this case, he said, any prison that doesn't put Epstein under 24/7 surveillance and solitary confinement right now is also responsible for him getting assassinated. Now, even if you don't think he got assassinated, weeks ago, and I've retweeted these over the weekend. Most common comment was like, come on, dude, we all knew that. So I'm not putting it out there as like Hassan's a genius, we at the Young Turks are geniuses. That's relatively true. But in this case, everybody knew. What are you doing? Yeah. Of course you have to have him on a 24/7. You're telling me that you run a prison where you've got a guy who might implicate a current president and a former president in a child sex ring, and you don't have him under 24/7 surveillance? That's unbelievable.
That's why, to some extent, I get the privacy concerns, but that's why I sort of disagree about not having the camera actually in the cell. I mean, obviously there's privacy concerns, I understand that, but it doesn't seem like there was anyone at greater risk at that point of dying in jail, whether of his own hand or not, than him in that period of time.
Yeah, look, I would never want cells, video cameras in cells or anywhere private like that, with the possible exception of Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, if ever there was a guy you had to keep 24-hour watch on, it was this guy, and he's the one guy that shows up dead. So, man, if it was just incompetence, heads are gonna roll anyway. If they don't, I mean,
guess they're not going to.
That's crazy. How can someone?
There's gonna be absolutely nothing.
No, under the most benign explanation, people must be fired over incompetence.
Okay, well, there has to be an investigation. We'll get Acosta to do it. He'll look into it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, if they cover it up right away and there's no consequences, that is even more questionable. Because if no one gets fired over it, wait a minute, you thought that went perfectly well?
Well, William Barr's in charge.
Yeah.
Why would he investigate?
No, but that's my point. If they don't, like if there's actual incompetence and he committed suicide because they bungled it, they would obviously fire someone, right? If they don't fire someone, that makes it less likely that it was incompetence and less likely that it was a suicide, because you wouldn't fire the guy who you worked with because then he'll tell people that you guys did it together, right? You would protect the guy who did it if it was a plot, right? If it's not a plot, you'd be like, what were you thinking? Not guarding this guy, you're obviously fired. You see what I'm saying? So if no one's fired, that's not a good sign. So we don't know yet, we'll find out. But look, guys, there's a lot of amazing things that have happened in this Trump administration. But this one will go down in the history books. People will be talking about how Epstein died for the rest of your life. It'll be 20, 30 years from now, and somebody will bring up this case, whether it's a conspiracy or not a conspiracy or whatever happened. But this will not go away. This is a perfect storm to launch 1,000 conspiracies, one of which might be true.
I wonder who's gonna play him in the movie. Paul Rudd could do the 90s for him. Anyway.
Okay, all right, we gotta take a break?
Yeah.
All right, we got a lot more coming up when
we need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be. Featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks. I mentioned agitprop in the last segment, so I want to let you know that the next episode's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow's a big day at the Young Turks. So at 3:30 Eastern, he's going to be joined by Felix Biederman from Chapo Trap House. So Chapo Trap House in the house. So you can watch the first hour live. It's freely available to everybody, tyt.com/live. The second hour is just for members, and obviously members can see it anytime they want. And in order to sign up through Agitprop, go to tyt.com/agitprop to let us know that that's what made you want to become a member, because that's very relevant to knowing what kind of shows you want to do. You want us to do, and we do this network together, as you all know. Of course, speaking of which, let me just quickly mention that we're going to do a rally in Houston as well. We did one in front of the Miami debates and the Detroit debates, but also Houston. So tyt.com/rally, that's where the next Revolution rally will be. We'll talk about that more later. Now, let me give you guys a couple of comments here. Norris Valkyrie says, both Cenk and John looking sharp today. New haircuts all around, #hot stuff. Agree to disagree, thank you, I appreciate it. But I don't have a new haircut, but John does look good. Okay, so, all right.
So now.
Yes, and and it's a very rare time that I don't actually make fun of John. All right, Bernard Bruther writes in, I'm glad I can watch the show live tonight. Greetings from South Africa. Greetings right back at you. And he's a member, and by the way, you don't even have to be a member if you want to watch it live on your app or on your television. You can just beam it in through almost any device that you have. Fire Sticks, Google Chromecast, Roku, Pluto, Zumo.
Ignite the Fire Sticks.
Zoom
Fish
it in.
tubes, whatever you got.
Yes.
You know?
All right, now to Twitter for a second. Guillotine Wolf says, if you guys don't let John onto Old School tomorrow night, I'll cancel my subscription.
It's really okay.
Yeah, and then he adds, not really though, but maybe.
Ron Perlman's awesome, but I'm also fine going home.
All right, all right. And last one, I rinse in McConnell's neck bag sweat, writes in, according to the right wing, Hillary was so sick and weak she could barely walk before the election. Now she has the strength to break into a prison and kill a man.
Bends the bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, according to the right wing / Donald Trump, the president of the United States. Okay, anyways.
Ruthless enough to murder Epstein, but not ruthless enough to do what's necessary to win the presidency.
Yeah, what a curious thing to ease up on, right? Like, I'll do anything. I'll kill one of my best friends in the woods. I'll break into a federal prison and kill the guy in front of everybody. Win the election? No, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, the only way they were gonna save his life was if that prison was in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. So let me tell you guys a little bit about Wolfpack. So Wolfpack's doing a film about corruption because obviously our politicians, our representatives, even the good guys are not talking about corruption nearly enough. And it's the reason we don't have federal background checks. It's the reason we don't have any kind of healthcare that covers all Americans. You can go on and on, but even if you're a conservative, there's a ton of things that the government can do, should do, are popular to do that they don't do because all they do is serve their donors. So Wolfpack is an organization that is nonpartisan to get them to get election reform any way possible. And so they're doing a movie about it to let you know, because apparently people think like, oh, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. Like on every other issue, there's something we can do, but on this one, there's nothing we can do. Of course, that's not true. You can pass an amendment, and it seems impossible, but it's actually not. It's very possible. They have a proven way of doing it. They're gonna show it to you in the movie, but first they gotta finance it. So last we checked in, they were at around, they only need $50,000. This is not a major motion picture, okay? They were at about $33,000. It's wolf-pack.com/film, wolf-pack.com/film. So you get all these great benefits if you want. You can come watch us at the studio here if you give a lot of money, but it'll get the movie done. You'll be a producer on the movie or an executive producer. You can watch it online with me and Professor Larry Lesser from Harvard, etc. But if you just give $10, you get behind the scenes newsletters, photos, and videos. And we want to show you one now to give you a sense of it. Like Mike Mineta is the director of Wolfpack, so he's the one filming. And the other guys, it's not a lot of guys who work at Wolfpack, okay? One of the other few staffers is Josh Aces, and his nickname is Aces, very clever. Anyway, he used to work in construction. He's just a patriotic American who wants to fix things. And same with Mike, okay? None of these guys worked in politics or lobbying or anything like that before. So they shot a little behind the scenes when they're going to visit legislators and getting the movie shot. So let's show you a little piece of it here.
How was the bus ride?
It was a bus ride.
Yeah? How many hours did it take you?
What's going on here? Some behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, say hi to everyone.
Hello. Sorry, I'm a little groggy. Boston traffic.
Yeah, it's a thing, huh?
It is definitely a thing.
All right, so what do you think about the start of this day, Josh, huh?
So we jumped in the wrong lift. Totally went the wrong way.
We did.
And now we got dropped off a couple streets over because they're doing some construction and we're about to hoof it.
To the camera guy's house.
To the camera guy.
All right, let's do it.
Sponsor here, Twan Gaines, she's awesome. I think she called herself a tiger, right?
She did. Yes.
I would agree.
Oh, look at this, Josh. Emergency use only. We want to call it and say we've got an emergency here. Corruption is
We got an emergency.
destroying America.
Congress and what is it? Special interest has a stranglehold on Congress.
All you have to do is pick up that phone, Josh. Go ahead.
I don't know.
No?
Nope. Nope.
He's not going to do it. Oh well. Next interview.
Okay, they're having fun. I love that behind the scenes stuff. Mike, next time, shoot the other way. Anyway, so Ace is the national organizing director. I want to show you some people that they filmed. Argentine Craig, she is a wonderful volunteer and activist in the state of Maryland. And she's working so hard to fix the system, get money out of politics, or whatever election reform that this country is ready for. And they interviewed her. They also interviewed Josh Silver. Josh Silver is the head of Represent Us, another wonderful group working to get money out of politics and fix the corruption in the system. They also interviewed Tawana Gaines. Tawana Gaines is the sponsor of the legislation for Wolfpack in Maryland. She's a Maryland House delegate. They're patriotic Americans, Republicans, Democrats, and everyone in between in all these different states fighting to get the job done. You could help by getting the message out, which is so important, at wolf-pack.com/film. Do that, and you get the chance to watch the movie with us virtually, or maybe even in the studio. So check that out, and I want to thank all the American heroes who are fighting this fight, and obviously all the folks at Wolfpack making this possible, and all of you who donated to it so that it could become a reality. Thank you. All right, what's next, John?
Okay, a lot more news, that's what's next. Virtually since she was sworn in, Representative Alexandria Cortez has faced an unending stream of abuse, both online and from right-wing media. And that has often, and especially recently, moved into the territory of what is perceived to be threats against her, encouraging violence, pitching her as some sort of extremist that she's not, billboards that are extremely inflammatory. We of course saw the messages from Border Patrol agents that were both violent and sexually violent against her and others in government. And now, today, we've got news of someone who came a step closer to being considered a credible threat against her life. Timothy Ireland, a 41-year-old, was indicted in US District Court in Toledo, which is not where the terror attack happened, Donald Trump, with one count of making interstate threats, one count of being a felon in possession of a firearm, and one count of being a fugitive in possession of a firearm, according to the US Attorney's Office for Northern Ohio. He was quoted as saying, "She should be shot, can't fire me, my employer would load the gun for me." And according to prosecutors on the case, he stated that he made those statements and was very proud of the post he made. He also stated he has firearms and always carries them concealed. That's what he said to the team investigating him after he had been found.
Yes, so they went to his house and they found ammunition, but not a weapon. But to be fair, he is proud that he is good at concealing it.
Yeah, I want to mention it because it's very odd. Capitol Police and ATF, they detained him at the scene at his house and found 7 rounds of ammunition, 3 rounds of 32 caliber ammunition and 4 rounds of 45 caliber ammunition. Who has 7 bullets?
Yeah.
That's not how you buy ammunition, that's bizarre.
And who has those specific kinds of bullets but not the guns to go with them? So,
even though he says he has a gun.
Yeah.
And it's concealed so well that they haven't found it yet.
And you're gonna be shocked to find out that this guy is a felon. He had committed crimes in the past and hence is not allowed to have those weapons. Weird that the mentally unstable guy threatening to kill people had committed crimes in the past. So that is part of the reason why authorities have taken him in. This story made me worry because for the obvious reason. The obvious reason is there's all these folks out there looking to do harm to people, or who at a bare minimum say it cavalierly online, like, oh, it would be great if I could murder a sitting congressperson. But, and by the way, when the authorities call him, the cops are calling you about a murder threat. He doesn't even think he should say he was kidding, even though that would obviously be a lie, given that he actually did say, oh, no, I'm proud of it. I would like to shoot her, right? Like, that's the state we're in, so that's the normal outrage, right? But I get that every day. So I'm beginning to wonder if I'm the crazy one that, like, I've just gotten used to death threats daily. Like, do people not get death threats daily?
No, regular people don't. Yes.
No, I know regular people don't.
Stuff has been normalized for you that probably should not be normalized. But yeah, if you're in the public eye, it's much more likely that crazy people are going to take an interest in you. And it's not always positive.
Yeah, I guess given the level of death threats I get, I'm surprised that more legislators are not getting them round the clock. Like that this is a news story.
Well, certain ones do. I mean, we know that Maxine Waters is targeted quite often. I mean, there was the pipe bomb scare, obviously. Now, she has talked about this previously. Now, understand the quotes we're gonna show you. This is from before this most recent issue, from earlier this year. But AOC had said about the sort of vitriol and threats that come her way. What people maybe do realize is when organizations air these hateful messages, my life changes because of the flood of death threats they inspire. I've had mornings where I wake up and the first thing I do with my coffee is review photos of the men, it's always men, who want to kill me. I don't even get to see all of them, just the ones that have been flagged as particularly troubling. It happens whenever Fox gets particularly aggressive and hateful too. Young interns have to constantly hear hateful messages, far beyond disagreement, from people we don't even rep. All of this is to say that words matter and can have consequences for safety. For those who believe in free speech, whose free speech do you believe in? Because some folks using free speech to defend racism are also supporting folks passing laws to allow running over protesters. And so she, of course, noticed the pattern between these death threats and the attacks against her on Fox News. Those continue, obviously. She's talked about in apocalyptic terms in right-wing media. She is pitched as a person that's trying to destroy your country, perhaps end your life, bring in murderers and rapists and those sorts of things. And then what do you know? Of the millions of people that watch those videos, some percentage take it really seriously, a smaller percentage wish they could act on it, and a smaller percentage perhaps might try, and that's where thankfully law enforcement has so far stopped any actual issues or any actual progress on that.
Look, I mentioned my case because I don't know how to get control over it. I don't mean for me personally, I mean overall as a society. I mean, there's the one part, AOC gets real death threats, Ilhan Omar gets real death threats nonstop, right? Every once in a while a Republican will go, you know what? Someone called up my office and was mean to me. No, dude, that's not a threat. Okay, that's if they were mean to you by saying I'm going to kill you, then that's a death threat, and you should definitely report it to the cops, et cetera, et cetera. But like, apparently they've got this bubble around them where they never even get criticized. So when they get criticized, they're like shell shocked. For the Justice Democrats, it's been 24/7, right? For all these young legislators that came in looking to upend the system and bring democracy back, no matter where the source is, but it's almost always the right wing. It's nonstop threats. But at least they're Congress people, and I don't mean to. I mean, it should be taken super seriously, and I like that they have files of the guys. That looks like law enforcement is doing a great job of at least doing their best to try to protect them. But if you're in the online world, good luck to you. There ain't no FBI and cops working 24/7. Look, Cesar Sayoc, the pipe bomber, did a threat against one of our hosts, Francis Maxwell. No protection. So, I mean, we're doing our best here, but what I'm telling you is this is madness, and it is definitely going to lead to a very, very bad result at some point.
Yeah.
And then everybody's gonna say afterwards, no one could have seen it coming. I'm telling you, first of all, it's super easy to see coming. Look on my Twitter handle, any day you could find a death threat, every single day, okay? Let alone the thousands of comments on YouTube and Facebook.
Oh God.
Where there are probably dozens. Look, the other day I did it on a whim. I was like, here, I'll scroll through for a second. Boom, found a guy who said, oh, I want to hang you until your neck snaps and you're dead, and et cetera. Retweeted it casually because it's every day. What am I gonna do, right? So I hope to God it's not anybody, but there's, to John's point, everyone is armed. There's a certain percentage that are mentally unbalanced. There's a certain percentage of that is prone to violence, and that is still a giant number.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and people will assume, what are you worried about? They've got security, Secret Service. No, they really don't. They walk around, they're as vulnerable as anyone. They have less security than your average YouTube star, than a lot of people do. It's a very dangerous situation, and you can't, what I would love is for them to stop demonizing her. They're not gonna do that, of course. We can't get anything out of right-wing media. Like after the El Paso shooting, so I posted a video as a challenge to one pundit in particular who likes to pitch herself as a reasonable person, Tommy Lauren. Stop saying it's an invasion. You can see that terrorists are saying the same thing as you, maybe just don't say that. No, nothing. They're still incredibly defensive about the fact that the New York Times today linked a lot of the language that you see on Fox News and Breitbart and things like that to the same language in the manifestos. They won't even change the particular words they use around it. Like the idea that the Five isn't gonna make every show about AOC and Fox and Friends are gonna attack her on every episode, even though they can see that we are getting closer and closer to someone making an actual attempt on the life of a particular congressperson. But they either they don't take it seriously or they don't care if something happens.
Yeah, last thing on this, guys. Aggressively criticizing politicians is awesome. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and we do it every single day. But the language that you use, to John's point, is so important. Because, for example, if you're gonna use it about a Jewish congressman or senator, you might love them, you might hate them. If you do hate them or you don't agree with their policies, if you say they stabbed us in the back, don't do that. You might think that, hey, look, it's because they voted with the Republicans, etc. No, you have to be careful about that stuff because that has a history. And what it does is it triggers people to violent action, right? Saying that somebody is an enemy of the people, it's an obvious violent trigger that has been used in the past to trigger people into violence, etc. And so when you know that history and you press that button anyway, repeatedly, well, then you're not being careful, you're being the exact opposite. You're almost egging people on. Yeah. And talking about how immigrants are invaders is a neon light blinking, do violence, do violence. This is what has led to violence almost every single time. And in fact, both Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson have said the immigrants will not replace us. That is classic fascist talk. And that is meant to trigger violence. If they don't know that, they're incredibly stupid and have no chance. And none of their producers know because it's on a teleprompter. No executive Fox News knows that. No producers at Fox News know that. And none of the hosts know that. No, I'm afraid that some of them do know that. And they write that anyway, not just to say, hey, I don't agree with their immigration policy, but to add the line that is implied. And someone should do something about it.
Yeah.
It's dangerous times. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your active ID more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Shrink the right-wing amygdala writes in. Our members have interesting names. Become one, find out. Anyway, you could pretty much do almost any name you want. Anyways, writes in, John gave Clinton 3rd-degree burns with that Wisconsin joke. Like Antonio Brown's feet. That's a football reference that John will totally not understand.
I get that reference.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe it. Okay. No, he doesn't.
Did he have a really good time in the combine? Or something? No, no, not even close.
Okay, please stop talking. Okay. Please stop. Okay.
I actually like football. I just don't follow it that much.
No, that's apparent. Okay, Joe writes in, finally got around to getting a membership. Hey, from Nova Scotia. Well, hey, right back at you, Joe from Nova Scotia. And if you guys want to do the same, tyt.com/join, independent media, where we don't just take the government's word for it, we also don't take lunatics' word for it. We actually try to do the best we can at ascertaining the facts. And we are also, of course, home of progressives and proud of our perspective. English teacher in 1984 says, I will never understand this Christian mindset, and she put Christian in quotes, that says, I disagree with you, therefore you should die. Now, to be fair, English teacher in 1984, that is definitely not just a Christian mindset. Unfortunately, the more accurate way of phrasing that is the fundamentalist mindset. So fundamentalist Muslims, Christians, even Buddhists think if you don't agree with me and my religion, it's time to kill you. And if you think the answer to, I think, being challenged on your ideas is to kill someone else, you're probably not on the winning side, right? Yeah. Like if you're so wrong that you think, well, the only shot I got is making sure that guy can't talk anymore by killing them, then your argument is probably the worst argument that anybody's ever heard.
Yeah.
And that's true for all fundamentalists. They're all idiots, zealots, and totally and utterly wrong. So I think that's pretty clear. I've stated my thoughts on that. And then one more thing, guys. So I told you we're a progressive show, obviously, most of you know that, but we also have progressive sponsors, including Aspiration. So that's where you can put your money and get the best rates, free access to ATMs all over the world, FDIC insured, no monthly service fees, and 10% of their money goes to charity, which is unbelievable. And they don't put your money in fossil fuel companies, private prisons, etc. So aspiration.com/TYT. It just takes about 3 minutes to open an account. If you want to throw $10 in there and see how it goes, or $100. And then as Anna did, and she's talked about it on the show before, she's like, I put a little money in, didn't think much about it. And then I looked at it and I'm like, these rates really are incredible, right? And so she started putting more and more, and then she transferred everything she had in there. And she's going around evangelizing to everybody. Like, do you know how you get cash back? Like you get cash, this is crazy. And you have peace of mind. Win-win. Aspiration.com/TYT. All right, John, what's next?
Okay, let's move back to the campaign. Like the rest of the candidates, Joe Biden is in the process of campaigning throughout this primary. But the tough thing about campaigning is that you have to talk a lot, and it's not going very well for him. Very often, frequently, over the past week or so, he's said things and hasn't really said what he meant to say, or got a little bit confused about timelines. And so we're gonna talk about that here. We wanna show you the most recent instance of this though, and it had to do with the movement spawned by the Parkland mass shooting.
I watched what happened when the kids from Parkland marched up to, and I met with them, and then they went off to up on the hill when I was vice president. They went off the hill to go into those neighborhoods.
So as many people of course pointed out, he wasn't vice president when that particular attack happened or when the movement happened. So of course he wasn't vice president to talk with them. An official with his campaign says that he was thinking of the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School when he misspoke. That attack, in which 20 children between 6 and 7 years old were killed along with 6 staff members, was in December 2012, so he would have been vice president at that time.
Well, so first of all, when I saw it, I was like, not in the category of gaffe. So let's talk about the different kinds of things that a candidate can say wrong and put them into categories so we have clarity. So when Biden says we're going to support truth over facts, clear gaffe, that doesn't make any sense. He just misspoke, right?
It's a George Bushism.
Yes, and so that's I think fairly clear and obvious. When he says poor kids can be just as smart as white kids, well, that might go to state of mind. So I would have that in a different category, right? Yes, you blurted that out by accident and he immediately fixed it, but why was that even in your head? So that's a slight, and this one is a third category where I'm worried about you, right? You were not vice president during Parkland. That's a really weird thing to say. And then nice job by your spokespeople of trying to cover for it by saying, oh, he was thinking of Sandy Hook when he was vice president. Well, that makes sense. And that seems like a pretty good excuse, and maybe it's true. Until you watch the video, which you just watched. He talked about the marches. The marches were definitely the Parkland kids.
Yeah.
So I'm worried about him.
So yeah, I mean, this is a tough one because I have to understand going into analyzing a story like this that I am not a Joe Biden supporter, and so I'm inclined to be more critical of him than I am of some other candidates, and so we think that he really imagined a time in which those marches happened and they came up and him and Obama were standing there. If that is true, that is not a small problem.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty significant one.
Well, I actually think that we're relatively unbiased about this. I don't support Joe Biden for winning the Democratic nomination. I'm super clear about that. But on the other hand, we're certainly not in any way, shape, or form right-wingers. And so I thought Hillary Clinton was definitely the wrong candidate. But when people were saying that she was having aneurysms, it's like, no, she's not. You're making that up. And of course, I was right about that. By the way, some people still haven't let that go on the right or the left, right?
It's been years.
It's been, when is the aneurysm coming? Okay, but so, no, I would like to think that we're super fair about the facts. I might not love Joe Biden's conservative opinions within the Democratic Party, but whether he has got a mental state that's sound or not it has nothing to do with policy. So along those lines, Donald Trump then tweets, Joe Biden just said, now referring to another gaffe, we believe in facts, not truth. Does anybody really believe he's mentally fit to be president? We are playing in a very big and complicated world. Joe doesn't have a clue. To which I would say, are you kidding? Okay.
Dude, sit this one out, man.
Right, like just let it go, let it go. What you're doing is drawing attention to yourself. So this is if what they say about Biden is true, it's gonna be a battle of dotards, right? Like Trump is the most mentally unfit person to ever serve in any public office in America, let alone president. You're talking about the world is complicated. You're the idiot who came out and said nobody knew healthcare was this complicated. Everyone knew that except you, dotard, right? And then also with North Korea, like, oh, North Korea, nobody knew North Korea was there, but that's okay, I can solve it. By the time I see him in 1 second, I can figure it out. Sit it out, dude, sit it out.
Can I add a few really quick?
Yes.
I mean, the Tim Apple thing, he called him by his company over and over. He's done that with other people. He tweeted Covfefe, we've seen him after getting off a plane, he has no idea where the limo is. There's nothing around, there's just the limo, he can't find it. His brain is melting out of his ears and he's criticizing Joe Biden. Now that does not mean that Joe Biden doesn't have a problem, but there is only one person who should not be criticizing Joe Biden, and it's the president.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep beating him up. So let alone the oranges of this story. Okay, he said oranges instead of origins like 4 times. And what's amazing is in the midst of that, he once said origins. So he knows the word origins.
Well, one more. Yeah. He was at a big meeting, the video cameras are rolling. He's like, I think it was Rudy Giuliani. I forget, it might've been Lindsey Graham, but he says, this person, Rudy Giuliani's been doing a great job. He's wonderful, where is he? Where is he? He was directly across from him and he couldn't find him.
Yeah, I like that whenever any host on this network has a question of fact, they don't look to me. They always look to the stage manager. Like, well, he might know. I mean, Cenk's not gonna know, but he might know. To be fair,
we don't trust the government, we don't trust each other.
Yeah, to be fair, we have the smartest stage managers in the business by a long shot. But anyways, another one that's just fun, it wasn't as big a deal, was, have you ever seen him leave the umbrella behind? Like, when he's getting into Air Force One, he's like, what do I do with this thing? I can't bring, I don't know, just leaves it.
Okay, you know why though? Because he has regressed to a pre-infant stage. He doesn't have object permanence. He thinks that when he stops holding it, it's gone from the universe.
I'm a very stable genius.
Yeah, who says that? Who says that? All right, anyway, last one. He thinks wind causes cancer. No one should ever let that go. On that statement alone, he should be impeached. We have a lunatic for a president, totally mentally unfit to be president. Anyway, so with that in mind, back to Biden, why would we put up the guy most similar to Trump against Trump? We're supposed to be going the opposite direction. Trump is polling in the 30s, but yet maniacally, the mainstream media and the Democratic Party insist, oh no, in order to fight Trump, we have to get the guy that is most similar to Trump. Yeah. What? That makes no logical sense. No, Cenk, John, you guys don't understand. We have to get a guy who is the most similar to the candidate that Trump was up against last time, an establishment Democrat with a long history of working with corporations and big businesses and big donors. Why? The last one lost to Donald Trump. The last establishment Democrat lost to a dotard. And she was actually totally fine mentally. She was incredibly smart, just didn't have the right policies. So Biden, on the other hand, is at best case scenario with the gaffe after gaffe. In a bad case scenario, it's worse than gaffes. We can do, I mean, you're talking about we got to go with Biden so we don't risk losing. What? That makes no sense. We can't go with Biden because we don't want to risk losing. But through all this, I'm desperate to be fair to all the candidates, including Biden. And look, there's still a part of me that likes Biden from the old days. I love his speeches when he leans in, goes, no, this isn't about politics. This is serious, I'm not joking. I love when he does stuff like that. But when he says Parkland and talked about the marches, and I'm worried about him, man. And if he's our candidate, then I'm worried about all of us. But even if you put the politics aside, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Agreed.
We're out of time. Okay, for the first hour, we got a great second hour coming up for you guys. And of course, it turns out that the Trump administration is against all immigrants, not just undocumented immigrants. Yes.
I just want to say we were going to talk about the Endangered Species Act changes. It will be discussed tomorrow morning on the damage report, so feel free to tune in. On tomorrow's episode, I'll break it down there.
This is recently it was the 5th anniversary of Michael Brown's death. The right wing and cops have found an obnoxious way to celebrate. I will counter that, which will lead to more death threats. Okay, so that's in the second hour. So come back and check that out.
Windmills, wing.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.